Good afternoon. It is Thursday, June the 6th. This is meteorologist Shay Gibson with SailFlow bringing a preliminary forecast for the Helly Hansen World Regatta Series 2024. This one, Chicago. So, pretty stiff winds out there today along that area of the Great Lakes, especially Lake Michigan on that southwestern quadrant where the thermal gradient off the city is really cranking things up in gusts out there. And there's some reason for that. And I think some of this offshore westerly flow or west-northwest flow is going to continue into tomorrow before the gradient starts to fade out tomorrow afternoon. Saturday looks a little different. We'll talk about that as well and into Sunday, but just keep in mind as we get into Saturday and Sunday, there's going to be a higher margin of error with a lot of activity, some traffic going from west to east up over Canada, with some low pressures and high pressures over the continental United States that are going to be competing for that atmosphere. So real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and share screen, kind of give you the gist of how we're going to go through this weekend. And we have our slide deck, which we'll talk about our speakers that'll be with me, with Chris Warner, Todd Bash, Dave Gerber, and Will Holtz. And each one of us will have some things to bring to the table as far as the race goes. Housekeeping rules, of course. You'll be able to ask questions, so please feel free to think of what you want to ask. And also, hopefully we can answer all those questions up front, but think about what you want to ask and any feedback that you might have. Forecasts, I'll be using some of the sensors in our area. The Montrose Beach Light is a good one, but there are other ones as well, which I'll be identifying on our SailFlow application. I'm going to be using the Tempest One application today. It's more of an enterprise one, but we'll be using SailFlow for all the race series for that matter. It's all the same user UI data. It just means that I'm using something a little more enterprise for the preliminary. So for the agenda today, overview, land influences, and breeze. Of course, we do have some land influences to talk about. Race rings are going to be here. Blue circle is going to be, I think, the most impacted during this race, simply because we're going to have a little bit more of an offshore flow overall for this race series, unless we get some south winds built up through the area on Saturday. So more to come there, but just be ready for that. Some discussion on the blue circle and how far out we can bring that and bring it to the attention of the race committee. Either way, for right now, let me bring the draw tool in. So what we have is we have three low pressures to talk about. These two here over Canada, and then we have another one that's going to be racing off towards the east-northeast across the northeast United States up towards Maine. These two eventually are going to conjoin, but they're going to kind of sit in place for the next 24 hours or so. There's going to be a little bit of, this low pressure is going to migrate up to this level here. It's going to be driven by this occluding front off to its east. And it's going to be pushing that warm air up into this low, and it's all going to conjoin up in this area. And then it's going to start to move off to this direction here over time. The other thing to think about, this high pressure expanding eastward or behind that front, that post-frontal flow that's conjoining with it across the Great Lakes right now, creating this strong gradient, this zone of wind that's going to be impacting the course today and tomorrow. Hopefully there's not many people out there practicing today, because that's some pretty stiff stuff with gusts up in the upper 40s. But that's the competing mechanism right now as far as what the wraparound flow is. As we get into Saturday, we start to see those two lows starting to conjoin a little bit more, but they sit up in place, and we're going to see some things kind of getting worked in behind it. So, we're going to go back to Friday and look at, kind of break it down day to day. But Friday here, you see this high pressure moving over the Midwest and conjoining with some of that low pressure up to the north, which I think is going to keep a little more wind, maybe west-northwest wind or northwest wind across the area than what the models are forecasting now. And the reason for that is because it doesn't quite catch that wraparound flow when you have mid-latitude or mid-level lows or upper-level lows to our north over this area. So if we look at the visible satellite, the overall picture, this is with the mid-level map put into place, and we see the low up here, the two slowly starting to conjoin. The other one mainly is a short wave off here to the east-southeast, to the southeast, and that one's going to be sort of trailing off, like I said, towards the northeast U.S. But what it's bringing is a geostrophic flow all around it. When I say geostrophic, it means it's pretty uniform top to bottom. So what you're seeing up here at 18,000 feet is going to be pretty similar to what you're seeing down at the surface. So this is a forced flow from top to bottom all the way around these lows, and this is why the models typically won't catch the surface flow, because it's trying to read what might be some differences between jetting aloft and then all the way down to the surface. So they tend to be a little bit on the light side, and rightfully so, because on the eastern side of the lake today, it's a lot less, and we'll talk about that too. Going into the sub-regional sector, I'll be using this one a lot. A little closer down, just a few clouds across the Chicago area down on the southern side of the lake. A lot of the cloud activity is going to be residing up to the north around the low. And I think we're going to continue to see this even in through tomorrow. We may get some pockets of these clouds, and there's a lot of sort of subsidence going on in these clouds. So there might be an isolated shower or two built into these as we get into tomorrow where that moisture factor starts to come in. But I think we'll just see some spotty, partly cloudy skies as we get through the race tomorrow. And then into Saturday, things get a little bit messier, but at least, I think we're going to have some decent wind. No storms to discuss, just maybe a little bit of rain on Saturday. But that's sort of what we're talking about. So anyways, for Friday, of course, we have this high competing for the pressure gradient, or at least the calm winds down. And we have this pair of lows starting to conjoin up here. And that keeps that west-northwest flow going across the area for tomorrow. The models now, if we go down to Tempest, if we go down to this map here, go ahead and try to get rid of this out of it. There we go. The Montrose Beach Light. Now this one's pretty close to land, so it's going to have some shadowing. You're going to see some ups and downs in the wind flow. If we go a little farther offshore, there is a free one out here, the Harrison Denver Crib. It's not one of our ProNet station. This one is governed by the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. But this one has some pretty good data. It only has the averages and the gusts, but at least it's reading pretty good out there. It's just enough offshore to catch a good reading. And what's going on today, and what I'm betting for tomorrow as well, is that we're going to continue to see this pressure gradient off the city heat. If you notice, these numbers over here are very modest in the 10 to 14 knot ranges, right? And the lake surface temperature is about 62, air temperature is about 72. So there is some thermal differences where you get this heat element off the Chicago across the lake that follows this wind. You get a thermal gradient that sort of acts as a bubble all the way out to here. So I would say your urban heat island impacts might encompass this kind of a pattern coming off the city from this way, right? You might have some winds really jut out across the center of the lake and then fade as they get over to this side towards Long Beach. And then as they get all the way over to this side, they sort of dissipate because the lake surface temperatures are 62 and it's more of a stable environment as those winds lay down. They don't quite mix all the way. At some point, they stop mixing. And so we could see some spats of it this afternoon with some of the stronger gradient does make it all the way over. And we see these numbers go up a little bit, but I think we're going to see this again tomorrow, not as strong. So I think we can relax on that and saying that I think we might be, get a little bit of a break from it. But either way, I'm going to use this point as a reference when we run all the models on this. And I'm going to tell you what I think. So gauging it, we're going to be meeting every morning at 7:30 a.m. to discuss these. And so tomorrow around the race at 10, 11 o'clock, we're looking at the high resolution models. Everything's pretty much in good agreement with, more than a 270 start. We're talking about 310, 320, maybe even 330 degrees. Somewhere in those ranges where the pressure gradient keeps in that 14 to 18 knot range, a couple of the high resolutions going up into the 20. I'm actually going to go higher than these. I'm thinking we're going to probably see 17 to 21 knots. And simply because the models typically will not pick up that wraparound flow, that consistent wraparound flow from top to bottom. So I'm going to go higher, and I'm going to still keep those gusts into the mid to upper 20s. So I would keep that in mind when you're rigging for tomorrow, that you might want to prepare just for some stronger winds of what the models are showing, simply because of that heat gradient that comes off of Chicago, especially if we get plenty of sunshine through the day. That's going to mix it down right across that area. And so that's going to be the call for tomorrow. Now we will see a fade probably early to mid-afternoon. We'll see the winds. The pressure gradient should start to slowly fade. We may see some ups and downs as those lows start to sort of conjoin and head off towards the east. Then the high pressure to the south keeps heading east as well, and that pressure gradient starts to fall. So that's why there's a lot of agreement with this going down. Saturday, I'm going to quickly go through Saturday. It looks like we have some frontal activity trying to move up towards the area. We have a short wave. Looks, this is at 12 o'clock. 12Z means 8 a.m. in the morning. And so we have this warm front sort of coming up this way. A little bit of a short wave activity that may try to transition over the area and draw the winds a little bit more south-southwest, while we're trying to keep this zonal flow around the low. And this may be perturbed by low pressure moving up into it and creating a little bit of a bubble over that. And then also this return flow around the high, bringing that convergent wind ahead of this front. So this is why I think Saturday could get a little bit tricky, where we may see the pressure gradient fade as that warm front segment heads towards the area, lightens up the wind. So if we look at Saturday's outlook, We see a difference in the models, right? We see the high resolution models hanging onto a westerly flow, maybe a southwest over to west, over to northwest. And then we have others hanging on to more of a southwest flow. So we're going to take this morning to morning and just, talk about the different points. The good thing is I think there's going to be enough wind on Saturday to carry us through either way, even if it does get a little wet and messy. I'm not anticipating any real storm activities to occur. So if we look at the SPC and go through down to Saturday, only just some thunderstorm possibilities. And I think they're going to be very isolated. I'm not so sure that we're going to see that all the way up towards the Great Lakes, that it really is more to our south. And I think that's going to hold pretty good spread there. Temperatures are going to be in the upper 70s. Looks like 70 on Monday, but pretty good weather overall for the weekend. If we look at Sunday real quick, go back to this for the wind. I think we're going to get this wraparound flow around high pressure that's going to be dropping down out of Canada. So here we have this ridge building, working it, digging down into the continental United States. And then we have this residual northerly flow around the low pressures as they start to head off to the northeast or east. And then together those will probably keep more of a northwest or north flow across the area with modest to moderate gains. And again, we're just going to take this day to day. So I'll stop share at that. I think we're in a pretty good position for the winds for 3 days. I think we'll have some decent winds, Saturday being a little bit of the variable, Sunday looking pretty good, but overall, I think you get the gist of it. But I'll go ahead and post this for today, and then you'll see it before the skippers meeting or at the skippers meeting tonight. And then we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7:30, bright and early, and bring your questions. So thank you very much. See you then.